Hi, good afternoon. Are you all well? I want to ask if you're motivated because I can see you full of energy. All right. We're going to be talking about stumbling blocks to learning and not just talking about that, but then give you, guidelines in terms of how you can overcome stumbling blocks. Stumbling blocks are kind of what we call barriers. These things that impede our progress, impede our going forward. All right? So let's get going. So the aim is to describe what stumbling blocks are and to provide means of overcoming them. Now, I could be using the word barrier stumbling block, but want to catch on stumbling block. Stumbling blocks impede learners from being fully present in the learning process. I'm sure that's very clear. You're not just a follower. You don't simply just go to school because parents want you there. But you also, at your level and at your grades, you see the value of being part of this process. So, we are addressing them to improve learners' engagement. We don't want you just to be there. When we ask you about your future dreams, you need to be knowing where you want to be and not just be a follower just because a friend decided to follow a particular career path. I also want to be part of that. So if we don't get this clear, that there's going to be frustration among learners if you just follow not knowing. And we see that quite often in the last year, like grade 12, where learners don't know what they're going to be doing into the next year, okay? And that's why it's important for us to have this conversation. So, I'll be talking to 4 types of stumbling blocks. That's motivational, social and cultural, emotional and personal. All right? Now, the first one is motivational. Now, the core word there, it's motivation. I would want to expose you to a theory here called the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That was theorized or postularized by an American psychologist, Abraham Maslow. And what he had said with his theory of motivation was that human, activity is driven by particular needs. Our motivation is driven by these 5 needs. 1, you see, it's a pyramid. There is a higher level and the lower level and the higher. At the basic level, basic needs that we have, it's all about physiological needs, about the body, what I'm going to be eating, what I'm going to be wearing, And Maslow says that for you to get to the higher next level, you need to be able to have dealt with that very well. And once there's fulfillment in that, you're then looking to the next level. And the next will be belonging. Belonging speaks about relationships. After you have been satisfied with having food, having security provided by parents, you feel the need to have associations, to have friends. I'm sure most of you, like the ones we've been talking to, they were saying, this is my friend. I got to know about this from my friend. How does it feel to have a friend? Any attempt? Show me a hand if you don't have a friend. All right, you see. Now, some saying, why don't you have friends? We are all different. Some people thrive in their own space, so there is never a right or wrong. But a sense of belonging gives you kind of a sense of meaning that I belong to a group. Like we are in this group today. We are in Gate Ministry. Being part of this congregation gives sense to you as young people. Why? Because of the teachings that you listen to. They give you a sense of identity. You have something that you can share with your friends at home. And there are various groupings that we belong to. So we'll get to that. And then after belonging, there's esteem, which speaks to our sense of esteem, our level of confidence. Now, coming to that one, there are two divisions there. You could be having a sense of esteem based on what others are saying about you, or you could have a sense of esteem based on how you feel about you. You do a self-assessment and you feel, I'm good, Now, you can see the difference that when you're at that level, there could be another level, because the one who depends on others' affirmation, if you don't get any positive affirmation, what will happen to you? You feel demotivated. When you hear a negative comment about your looks, you begin to worry and you go short left. And so, with assessment that gives rise to I am good, it doesn't matter who says what about me. So who you are then is not determined by what others are saying, but by a sense of understanding of who you are. And that would have been informed by your level of belonging. I am this person. I belong to this organization. I belong to this family. And I know who I am. Now, the highest level of, understanding yourself is self-actualization. That speaks to when you have this sense of, I am a son of the living God. It doesn't matter who says what to me. It doesn't matter whether we stagnate home or we have this or that, but we're grateful that God is our Father. How's that? Now, that has been, applied in various contexts, in businesses, in leadership development, and also coming to students. Let's look at the lowest level for students, for learners. It's basic needs that we all have, whether you're working or not, about clothing. The next level is safety, not only house protection, but to have a sense that my parents are there. Should there be any challenge, I don't have to worry about this and that. I go to mom and dad. Once you have that kind of comfort, it helps then with your schoolwork. You are able to do things without worrying. And then belonging. As we've said, you belong to different associations, and at school, you also need to have friends. Some sense of belonging based on who your role models are. I'm sure your teachers will become that, all right? You come to church, you look at everyone, you see people coming in and out, and you think, I want to become like this pastor, like this mother, like this doctor, and all those things. That gives you a sense of self. And then there's esteem again in the classroom. You know as learners what happens in your spaces. Lot of comments, lot of negativity. And those tend to make people, not wanting to go back to school. We often get kids who've been resistant to go to class because of comments that are being made about them. So, part of your development is, as we try to do this, empowering you so that you can have a better understanding of who you are and where you want to go, And where you want to go is not where your friend wants to go, but it's you. And the highest level of self-actualization for students is when, in relation to your learning, you're not just a follower. You want to be there. You know why you are a student. When you ask you about your dreams, you're able to call them out. I want to become a doctor. I was sitting with a young ones, learners up there, and most of them are saying, we want to become psychologists. The one says, I want to be a nurse. So they want to become health professionals. But it will be disturbing when you are at grade 12, you don't even know what you're going to be doing in the next year. So that's why it's important to work and navigate yourself through the various stages. Let's move on. So, motivation, that's what Abraham Maslow was teaching us. But then what is the antithesis of motivation? What is the opposite of motivation? Any attempt? Lack of motivation, And without that, there's no excitement about going to school. Without that, there's no excitement about your books. You choose other distractions, but not schoolwork. All right? So we're saying without motivation, you don't dream because there are no goals. You just live for tomorrow. And very often we find that most young people are stuck at the lowest level of needs, where it's about money, it's about brands, So life is all about what I have. Now you can see in terms of the model, it's the lowest level. So why we're saying that is that be cautious about those things. Let not your life just be about what I need, my identity to my friends, how I look, what I put on. All right. And without that, we say you go through motions of learning and without grasping what you've learned. This is when you spend time in the bedroom to please the parents, but there is no understanding of what you are doing. And that will show up when you go for tests. And therefore, if you're not doing well, you should be worried and see how we can change that. So, how can we deal with these stumbling blocks? Firstly, we're saying eliminate distractions. What are things that impede you from doing your work, from stopping you from learning? Any attempt? What are your distractions? I don't hear. Cell phones, because you love your spaces and parents grant you that, you're in there, they're thinking that you are busy with your studies. Meanwhile, you are busy with friends. Who's fooling who there? So cell phones, it's everything. And there is substance abuses these days with the young ones. We're trying meth, crystal meth, there's those kind of things. So you have to identify what your distractions are and ask a question. For an example, when I spend so much time on this activity, how is that going to impact on my studies? Because as young people, what is your major project? What's your project? Your major activity? Study. Because parents are making sure that you get what you need to become the best you can be, so that one day you can tell them that I want to pursue this study. It's not us who will be saying, go into that route, but it is for you to take control of your future. Parents can just give you support. There's also a need to set boundaries. When there are no boundaries, you do anything. You don't study, you follow your friends, weekends you party and all those kind of things. And these are skills that you are going to be living with throughout your life. If you become an adult who cannot set boundaries, you're in serious trouble. There's also the aspect of delaying gratification. Most of us, we want it when? Now. We cannot wait. You want the sweets now. Something that we're exposed to as little kids. You'd be asking for this, but they would be saying, first do your task and then you'll get rewards. Now you want rewards before action. So, our responsibility is to commit ourselves to our work. Cell phones and social media, let it come last. Because if we mix up our priorities, you spend too much time on TV, too much time on the cell phone. What is the risk there? You won't finish your studies. And bear in mind that you don't stay a child forever. You reach 18, you're an adult. So if you are still a learner, you are a dependent adult. That's why you still have covering of your parents. And because you're still under their roof, you live by their rules. But imagine if you don't progress well in your studies and you reach those ages, who's going to be buying your cell phones at the age of 24? You start wanting to watch TV until 12, and then there comes a moment where parents says, my boy, my girl, this can't happen in this house, you see. And therefore, it's important to understand that we're not going to be kids forever. There's a need for discipline, commitment to a set routine. That points to the necessity of us setting goals. As learners, you need to know why I'm here, what do you want to achieve, and have a clear plan that you'll follow. Without any set plan, where do you go? You go anywhere. You become a follower. And therefore, it's important that basically at school, you have timetables that determines what you do at a particular time. And that's a skill that you carry throughout your life. Let everything be orderly. Time management. Determine what you need to do. We often encourage daily plans for the day. I'm going to have so much time, and at this time, I'll be doing this and that. After school, what do I do my time? Apportion your time in accordance to your activities. There's time for study, and you look at the allocation. You're not going to be having 30 minutes or an hour on to your studies and the whole day playing, being on social media, you know. I'm sure you can hear this repeated talk about social media, which is the greatest danger to us as young people. All right? So, social and cultural factors. Benefits of social interaction. It's often said that as human beings, we're wired to belong in social interactions. And it is when we can navigate ourselves very well in relationships, we're able to do well in other parts of our lives, okay? So, relationships provide opportunities to interact with others. You don't just live only by your dictates, what you think, but being in interaction with others, it gives an opportunity for you to receive feedback about how you do things. And we're earlier hearing about the need to make judgments. In the course of that, you'll learn to know what is good advice, what is bad advice. Something that you're going to need throughout the entirety of your life, all right? And you don't only receive, you also get an opportunity to be an actor, active participant in the relationship, where you can also give advice to your friends, okay? How does it feel for you to be able to give advice and there is good reception to that process? How do you feel when your friends affirm what you've said? What do you say? You feel good. And what that does, it boosts your sense of self, self-esteem, confidence, and that makes you want to talk more. But once you don't participate, you don't get any feedback, you're bound to be stuck in a corner. And therefore, hence there's a need to socialize, interact with other young people. The next thing that we said, you receive and give support from peers, very critical. Learners with low social skills are at risk of developing communication problems. They tend not to want to talk because you're not sure if what you say would make sense. I'm worried that they're going to be laughing at me. But it is only when you engage in activities, you get accustomed to how we interact. They will laugh, but what does it do about me? It doesn't say anything. The more you practice, then you're bound to want to do more. Before you know it, you're on stage, you are talking. All right? And the next level is a cultural element. we all belong to different cultures. Could be tribal, lifestyle cultures, and all that. And in those groups, we come to have ideas about other people. It's good to belong to those groups because they influence our ability to learn and to grow. But not all cultural groups are positive. Some tend to stigmatize other groups, okay? And therefore, it requires, being insightful about what you receive. Hence, we say being part of a group would expose you to the negatives and the positive. And therefore, so that there's a better understanding about who you are. I've said cultural tendencies, behaviors may be considered affront. That is when you do something that people don't like. And depending on the group that you belong onto. And because of that, there's isolation. And that may push you further from society where you then become a societal delinquent. All right? So, what do we do? We have spoken about the importance of belonging to a group. I've seen some of us have said, I don't have friends. Now, we don't say it's bad, but it kind of creates a dysfunction. Because if you are a loner, you find that life demands that you be in associations. You're going to be working one day. You can't work alone. You need others. And if you don't associate, you feel isolated. Despite your knowledge of your work, you'll be feeling like, a loner out there, isolated, and that may make you lose interest in the work that you do. And so I want to encourage you as young people. There are so many opportunities that have been created for you to interact with others. When you meet someone who you don't know, get into a habit of trying to know about those people. I always say to people, become like a reporter. What does a reporter do? They operate on the principle of 4 whiskeys in a hotel. Do you know what that is? What is happening? Who is involved? Where did it happen? And when? And how? That's what you can use in starting conversations. Hi, how are you? What's your name? Where do you come from? What do you do? And as people open up to you, you become, positive and confident I can be able to engage with anyone. The same thing you can ask parents about. Tell us about yourself. How did you guys get to where you are? You see. So that's the highest recommendation. Make effort to associate, acclimatize yourself with different cultures. Not necessarily belonging to them, but to know. How do we get to acquire knowledge? What do we do? Any try? We read, guys. We have to read. I know most of you do read, but what do? You're watching, messages on social media. That does not, help us. It's about gossip, it's about who's doing this and that. But reading for understanding, it will help you going. Find role models, find mentors, find coaches. Let me tell you a quick one here. I had a parent who had a challenge with their daughter, and it was very frustrating. And we raised the aspect of allowing, exposing your child to some coaches. She grabbed that in one session. The next thing we met, she was saying, you know what I've done? I've found a spiritual coach for my daughter. Someone who can be able to help her understand issues of religion at their level. And I've also found someone who can speak to them about finances because she was already working, you know. And so it was not the parent doing that, but they've asked someone to do it for them, you know. And before we know it, there was quite excitement between the mother and the father. She was motivated. She wanted to do things for everybody. So we also have to take responsibility as young people, identify role models. I was kind of an example of this. Nosipo, when I was in grade 10, I had struggled with maths. I barely scraped through. But in my next year in high school, I was in the Free State, I noted that students from the Free State were so knowledgeable about maths and sciences. And I thought, I'm going to grab that opportunity. I draw one close to me. Men, help me. It didn't take me the whole year to understand and to enjoy maths. But by them pointing to the need to understand some processes, theorems and algorithms and all those things, it helped me. Now, I did it as a student. You can also do the same thing. If you're too scared to ask a teacher, find among yourself a learner who seems to be clued up about that. You can be able to ask questions without feeling that you're not as smart. All right? So let's look at emotional. The first one is encouragement. Learning can be influenced by different sounds a learner listens to, and those sounds can be internal or external. External sounds of voices is what others are saying. And for an example, if what you hear from home is that you are not a good kid, so and so is better than the other, how do you feel? It demotivates you. It affects your learning because you think you are not cut for that. At the same time, the voice can be from within. So if you get positive response, you get excited. Simple things like, you have done well, you know. That's why when you're young, you get cookies, you get sweets when you have done well. Those are encouragement. The same thing if you don't speak well about yourself. I'm a slow learner. I'm not good at that. Now, we often say, allow others to say that about you, but not yourself. You have to have a positive, representation of yourself. I am Matsidiso, and I'm come from this place, so that even the people that you speak to can get the vibe that this person understands who they are. So, the encouraging voices set us for success because they propel us to move forward. We move away from the corners. We want to be seen by everyone. The opposite of that will be condemnation. When you have not done well, we'll be looking at you've got 8 out of 10. We've got cases where a child is doing 70, but parents are never satisfied. No, you can do better, it must be 100. And that causes distress. They end up, losing track of what they're supposed to be doing. And what we're saying, we teach you so that you can also do it with your friends. Do not be this kind of a friend who always holds a red pen, finding mistakes. You have not done well. When you see something good among your peers, let it be known that you're impressed by that. Just show me how did you get to that level. All right, the next position on emotional factors is student well-being. We've spoken about that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we spoke about that level of self-esteem, which we say, once you understand who you are, and who you are not being derived from what I have, whether I have money or not, you will feel good about yourself. You're very happy that I'm committing myself to my studies. I'm listening to my parents. I've got good relationship with my friends. That gives you a sense of meaning. You may be as poor as a church mouse, but you have a sense that whenever I'm in a space, I make a difference. I spoke about the difference about affirmation from others or self-affirmation. Okay? And so, poor self-esteem results in feeling of inadequacy. So and so is better than me. And because that's how you feel about yourself, you stop trying. This life can never be good if you don't exert yourself. If you do studies, you may not be doing well. Maybe you fail one test. It doesn't make you a failure. Doesn't make you a bad person. You keep on trying. Without trying, you will never reach your goals. And therefore, the other stumbling block is anxiety. What we often encounter at work, it's fear of failing. And because I have failed, you turn that into, I'm a failure. Are there any failures in this room? I thought I would, failures? Yes. I thought I would hear, yeah, no. Now, failing is not the same as failure. As you grow up, all of us have failed at some point. But what makes a difference is when you don't just give up. We often hear that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. Okay? And therefore, you accept the fact that I'm a young person, I don't know everything. And that's why there are those ahead of me. I should be willing to be led. Now, that's very critical for you as a group. To be willing to be led. Who must lead you? Who should lead? Yourself, and who else? God, you see. A sense of belonging. I'm a child of God, and therefore I wait for a cue from him. And he's given us parents who's supposed to show us the way. I'm sure many of you didn't have the desire to be in church, but because parents insisted that not in this house, that's part of encouragement, you know. And so, be willing to be led by our parents. Be willing to submit to the teachings of our apostles, of our fathers. Be willing to submit to God. If we don't do that, we'll follow everybody. And I'm sure where you are, you can attest to some of those kind of behaviors where people have become just followers. So how do you overcome? Eliminate negative thoughts, negative emotions. Never say negative things about yourself. I speak of positive rephrasing and affirmations. For an example, I have failed, but I'm not a failure. So you turn that negativity into something positive, and that is a cue. Should you feel that this sounds negative, what could be the positive presentation of what I'm saying? You know, if you don't understand, you ask someone else. Setting goals and focusing on future with desired outcomes. Goals, it's about something that is beyond yourself. The goal is not about here, it's out there. And therefore, once you set a goal, you start getting a process in place. You set up plans, step-by-step plans on how I get there. And there may be challenges along the way. As that happens, you start asking questions. You seek those coaches. You seek your teachers. You seek your parents. You know, if parents don't have much information, ask them to lead you to a better place. In the worst of circumstances where you are not coping well, there's too much anxiety, panic attacks, would then recommend that you consult with a therapist. We've often heard people saying that, no, you can't go to a therapist because it's only Malcope who go there, you know. It's people who are having life challenges. And as you come, we help clarify the road. You could be walking in darkness. Our role is to hold a candle for you to see where you are going. It is not for us as therapists to tell you how you should live your life. But we ask you, where do you want to go? And we set the light for you. Okay. And then, I'm almost there. In conclusion, There is this statement by Henry Ford that I want you to take note of. Obstacles are frightful things you see when you take off your eyes off your goal. And what would be the implication of that statement? Is to remain focused. You've set yourself a plan, you've set goals. Stay focused. Immediately you lose that, you may feel, you're not getting there. But like we say, we need to remain focused and be determined. And what does that mean for us? It applies to our context as learners, that learning that prevent us from growth, new opportunities, and ongoing development. So, this simply says that we have an opportunity to grow. We have an opportunity to develop. We have an opportunity to become the best we can be. If learners stay focused on their goals, they face their failures or change. You don't just end up there, I'm a failure, because whoever is saying this. So you recognize things that demotivate you as a learner. We want you to be alert. When things don't go the way you want, don't feel that it's the end of the road. You are still young. There is still much to be learned in this journey. And therefore, encourage you to give it your best. Thank you. The next component of this session will be the practical, and I'm going to ask Solorato to lead us here.
Okay, afternoon everyone. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys to please stand. Okay, I see some of you are stretching. Okay, so just to wake you up a bit, because I think lunch was a bit too good. So, I'm going to ask you guys to follow and do as I'm doing, okay? So put your right hand up. So your fingers should face the sky, so point towards the sky. Now I need you to start circling in a clockwise direction, right? So that means from 12 to 1, right? Okay, now slowly bring your hand down. Keep circling, keep circling, keep circling. Are you still going clockwise? Look at your finger. Is it still going clockwise? Some of you are going this way. Okay, thank you guys. You can take your seats. All right, you can do that again at home. See if you're getting it right. But as you guys have seen, they've given you guys pieces of paper. So please have that close by. We're going to do a quick activity. So I'm going to be emphasizing the personal and practical barriers that we can face, particularly towards us learning, and usually when we need to learn something new. Okay, so we have a problem, right? So you might look at this and think this really doesn't look like a problem, but let me explain the instructions, you'll understand why it's a problem, okay? So this looks like a house with an X in it, and your task is to draw it, right? Sounds simple, right? The catch is you need to draw it from start to finish without picking up your pen until you're done, right? So that means you're connecting all the lines to complete the sketch without lifting your pen to start drawing another side of the house. Make sense? Okay? And the last instruction is, I'm going to time you guys. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Don't start yet. I'll count you down. I'm going to give you 60 seconds. You can make as many attempts as you like, as long as those attempts are made within the 60 seconds. Okay, so we're all good. Okay? Your time starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. So remember, you cannot lift your pen You only lift it when the sketch is done. If you get stuck, you can start again. Yeah, so you can't go over the line twice, okay? So if you've done it once, if you've drawn the line once, the line is drawn. You can't build the same wall twice, guys. You're building a house, remember? Okay, 20 seconds left. Okay, I see some of you are phoning a friend. 6 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay, your time is up. Pens down, everyone. Okay, can I see your hands? Pens down. Okay. All right, so before I show you guys the solution, let me get your thoughts. Can we please have the roaming mics ready? So the first question I'll ask you guys, how many of you guys looked at this sketch and thought, this is going to be easy? Just by show of hands, like when you saw the problem, you're like, I can do this, okay? Now that you've done the activity, how many of you still think it was easy? Oh, only Jaro thinks it was easy. And Kyolin, okay. And Mamelo, okay. So did you guys get it right? Did you figure it out? Yes? No. Okay, so let me take hands again. Who got it right? Who figured it out? Okay, for those who, keep your hands up. So for those with their hands up, have you guys seen this activity before? Okay, yes. Have you? Not? Not. Okay. Did you phone a friend? No. Okay. Okay, so for everybody else, I'll put you out of your misery. You can follow with as we go through the solution if you want. So, we start with the wall on the left. Go up on the roof. Left. Across. Down. Then we go up. Right across. And the bottom. Okay. Okay, so well done to those who figured it out in 60 seconds. For the rest of us who didn't figure it out, thank you for still trying and not giving up. So, let's reflect a bit on the activity that we just did, right? So, when I said to some of you that we're going to do a problem, right? Maybe some of you got a bit nervous. Some of you, because you saw the sketch, you thought, this is going to be easy. But as you've seen, that wasn't necessarily the case, right? And there are a few things that I'm going to highlight, particularly about some of the personal barriers that we can have that can hinder us in how we perceive a problem or perceive a task. So the first thing is what we call a mental set, right? So I want you to also reflect on the activity as you were doing it. So how many of you, when you did the activity, you got to a certain point, got stuck, then started again, but you did it the same way? Let's see. Okay, so a few of us did it, right? Because in your mind, you're like, okay, I got this far, so clearly this method is working, right? Sometimes we do that with how we approach our studies as well, is you keep using the same method, the same technique, because it's gotten you this far. You know, you're like, I'm in grade 10, and I mean, I studied the night before, and it's working, right? And you feel like that approach is serving you well, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll help you accomplish the end goal in mind, which in this case was to finish the house, okay? The next thing is sometimes we can over or underestimate something. So again, with the example of you looked at the sketch and you thought, I can draw a house with an X in it, until I gave you the instructions. Then you realized it actually wasn't as easy as it looked. And sometimes we can do that the other way around. So we had Nosipo who did the session on maths. So sometimes you literally have an X minus Y equals 0 sum, and you're stressed because you're wondering why the X is there, right? So sometimes we can also overestimate something and overcomplicate it in your mind because you just heard the word maths and you got stressed, okay? And lastly, sometimes it's just the format. So for example, some of you may have seen a sketch and thought, I can't draw. So already you were feeling stressed because like now we have to draw, oh my word. Some of you, maybe it was the color of the drawing. You hate the color blue and that was annoying. Or maybe you don't like me and I'm annoying, you know? But those are all factors that will influence how you learn. Those are things that can hinder you. You can zoom in so much on the fact that it was color blue and I don't like blue, or it was a sketch and I don't like drawing, or it was her who was presenting and not my favorite person. All of those things can hinder you from learning. Think about it. Most of the time, the subjects you don't like, you usually also don't like the teacher, right? And sometimes it's not necessarily the content, but it might be you don't like the person who's presenting it or the way that they are presenting the topic. Okay, so this is to highlight some of the personal barriers that we can also carry. And I'm just highlighting these things so you are aware of them so that you are able to also work on them. Okay, so you can catch yourself when you're doing this. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to take us through is what we call the 3 R's. And no, it's not reduce, reuse, recycle. Okay? So the first one is results. Okay? So now we're tackling the practical barriers. So sometimes when you don't know what the assignment is or what the end product is, it's difficult to work towards it, right? So if you've been given a task or an assignment and you don't know what is it supposed to look like, what if they say make a bridge, you don't know how tall the bridge is supposed to be, what material you're supposed to use for it. So clarifying the task or the assignment is another way of overcoming that barrier, because you know what your assignment is, you can picture what it is you need to do. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one is what are the rules, okay? So same with the activity. You saw a house with an X, you thought, I can do this. But if you don't know the rules, same when some of you were drawing over the same line, and then when I was like, no, you don't need to do that, then you're like, ish, now I have to start again, okay? So clarifying the rules or what the boundaries are for that task or assignment is important. Because sometimes that's also where we lose marks. So are you supposed to give a paragraph or a one-word answer? Are you supposed to reference that document? Okay? And the last one is, what resources do you have or do you need for the task? Okay, so if you know you have a maths test, for example, coming up in 2 weeks, that's how much time I have. How much of the content that I'm going to be tested on do I actually know? So you need to start already planning. So the moment you get your assignment, you should be asking yourself, okay, I know what I need to produce. I know the rules or the parameters of the task. What are the resources that I have? And what are the resources that I need? Okay. So this is the end of the demonstration. But I want to encourage you guys to say, after today's presentations, we had a lot of speakers who shared a lot of valuable information with you. But it doesn't mean anything if you guys don't consume that information. Okay, so I saw a lot of you were taking notes, that's good, but it also doesn't help if the notes are sitting on your desk somewhere. So I'd encourage you all to revisit the notes again, and you'll see in your booklet they also are like references to workshops we've done in previous years. So please look at those as well, because there are sessions we covered that we didn't cover today, but that were covered in last year's workshop. Okay, so thank you guys, and the whole point of saying eat for the journey is long is consume all the information that you're being given. All the people that are pouring into you, whether that's us or your teachers or your mentors, absorb as much of that information as you can, because that's what you need. And we are young people, so the journey is still long for many of us. Okay, thank you.